Hi, welcome back to the channel. In this video I'll be sharing how to make extra comfy palazzo pants with side pockets and a zipper. So if you want to see how I achieved this, you want to keep on watching up to the end of the video. So to begin, I'm going to take border lines at the top and along the side, so I have even measurements. If you know I like to take border lines just so I have a point from where all my measurements will be taken. So at that top point, I'm going down the edge of the paper by half an inch, and I'm ruling it from side to side just enough to take my measurements, and that would also serve as my waistline later on. Then I did the same thing on the other side of the paper, half an inch from that side from where all my measurements will be taken. Then from that top borderline we took, I'm going to take my waist to hip measurement, or my waist to hip depth, which is 9 inches, and that is what I'm marking out currently. My waist to hip is 9 inches. You want to work with your personal measurements, okay? So I'm using 9 inches and I'm just making dotted lines on the 9-inch point. Then I would go ahead and connect all those points together with a straight ruler from end to end, and that would serve as my hip line for this pattern. Next up, I'll be taking my crotch line, and from that top line where I took my hip depth, from that waistline I'm going to measure 12 inches, and that would be the depth of my crotch. So from that waistline you can see that I'm just marking 9 inches. So basically your crotch, when taking your crotch measurement, you want to sit on a hard surface and measure from your waist to where your butt touches the seat or the surface. So mine is 12, and that is what I have that is what I'm marking out currently. Basically the same way I connected the hip line, I connected the crotch line with a straight line later on. Then I'll be taking my waist to knee. My waist to knee is 24 inches. I'm just going to measure from the waist to the 24-inch point, and that would be my knee, or the depth of my knee from my waist. So that is my knee line and the length of the trouser as well. So this is what our pattern is looking like at this point. Then I will take a quarter of my hip measurement. My hip measurement is currently 38 inches currently. So if I divide 38 by 4, it's 9.5, but I won't be using 9.5. I would add an extra 1 inch for ease and for seam. So I'll be working with 10.5 inches. So I'm just going to place 10.5 on that border mark, like you see me doing. I'm going to draw a mark out the 10.5 on my hip line, on the crotch line, and on the waistline as well. So basically I'm taking measurements from that border line and I'm marking out 10.5, which is a quarter of my hip, which would be a quarter of my hip for this pattern. Then I would connect all those dotted lines, or all those dotted points, with a straight line using my ruler and my marker, and that would be the width of my hip for this pattern. So I'm just going to connect all those points together like so, and this is what we're having at this point. So once that is done, the next step would be to take my waist measurements. Do note that we haven't taken that yet. So I won't be taking from the edge of the paper, rather I'll be taking from that line which we just drew earlier, or which was drawn earlier. And the line, basically the line for my hip measurement, so that's where we'll be taking our waist measurement from. So from this point I'm going to measure a quarter of my waist plus 1. A quarter of my waist currently is 7.5 plus 1 inch, 8.5. So from that hip line, from that line we drew as a quarter of our hip, I'm going to measure 8.5 on the waist, along the waistline, and I'm going to mark that out. So that would be our waistline for this project, but I'm still going to shape that out later on. But first we'll be making the crouch for this project. Now the formula for getting your crouch, or the formula I use for getting my crouch, is my hip divided by 4 plus my hip divided by 16. So basically the figure I get when I divide my hip by 4, I add it to the figure I get when I divide my hip by 16. So currently my hip is 38, divided by 4 is 9.5. But do note, or do remember that we're for this project I'm using 10.5 for my hip, which we have already established. So my hip divided by 4 for this project is 10.5, plus my hip divided by 16 is 2.4. So 10.5 plus 2.4 would give me 12.9. Okay, so when I add 12 10.5 to 2.4 is 12.9, which is approximately 13. So on that crotch line, I'm going to measure 13 inches, which means my crotch would be 13 inches wide. So do understand the formula for this, like I said, is your hip divided by 4 plus your hip divided by 16. So whatever figure you get when you divide your hip by 4, you add it to the figure you get when you divide your hip by 16. So that is my crotch line. I connected it back into the hip line and I drew it down from that edge all the way to the hem with a straight line, nothing major. So this is what our pattern is looking like. Next up, I'll be connecting that waistline to the hip. So you could use a pattern master or a French curve for this, a French curve rather. You could use a French curve for this, but I am going to freehand it and I'm going to connect from the hip to that waistline. So this is what we have. Then normally the waistline isn't straight. I have said, like, if you know me, I would raise my hip for skirts and trousers. So I'm going to raise that waistline by half an inch, basically just so it sits more comfortably on the waist. So I'm going to raise my waistline by half an inch, and that's the half an inch mark. Then I'll divide my waistline by 2. Folding the tape helps do this a lot easier. So divide my waistline by 2, and from that point I'm going to connect it to that half an inch mark. So you can see that I'm basically sloping the waist from the sides down to the front, just to create a more comfortable and realistic look or outcome, because the waistline normally isn't straight. So this would be our new waistline, and that is our hip line and our crotch line and the crotch depth, and this is what we're having at this point. Next, I'll be taking the pocket depth, which is 7 inches. I like to use 7 inches, but I don't know. I feel depending on how deep or how wide you want the opening of the pocket to be. So this is 2 inches wide and 7 inches deep. So this is what our plan is looking like currently. Next, I'll be reducing the bottom hem of the pattern. So the side that has the crotch, I would reduce by 1.5, and the outer side of the pants or the outer side of the patterns are reduced by 1 inch. So what this does, it ensures that the pants don't seem too big at the bottom. So it helps to give it that straight silhouette. It helps to give your palazzo pants look straight. Yeah. So from that inner crotch line, I reduced the hem by 1.5, and on the outer side, or the outer hem or outer side of the pants, I reduced by 1 inch and cut it out. And this is what our pattern is looking like. I labeled everything, the grain lines and all. I won't be cutting out the the part that has the pocket, because I'll be using this pattern to cut out the back as well, and I'll be showing you how to. So first off, we'll be cutting out the front. I'm just going to lay the pattern onto my fabric, which is folded right sides facing, and I'm just going to cut the same way I cut the pattern, just that I added to the length because I figured it wasn't the pattern might not be as long as I want it to be, then I added about 5 inches to that. So if you want your pants to be extremely long, or you want to put on heels, ensure to add the measurement of your heels to the pattern as well. Okay, then I cut it out like this, and this is what it's looking like. I notched the 2-inch point and the 7-inch point for the pockets. I won't be cutting it out. I'll be showing you guys how I install my own pockets. I basically notched it at the waistline and at the sides of the pants. So this is where my pants will stop on the sides. To cut out the front, or the back rather, to cut out the back, I folded my fabric into two again, right sides facing. A tad bit wider than the front plan. So because the back would be 2 inches wider than the front, from that crouch line up to that crouch seam. So the back would be 2 inches wider than the front. So what I'll be doing is, on that crouch line of the front, I'm going to measure 2 inches on the back, and you can see that the fabric is folded into two, and it's placed the front fabric is placed on the back plan, and I'm marking 2 inches on the crouch depth, and even on the sides. So not the outer sides, the inner sides of the pants, not on the sides that would have the pocket. So I'm just going to extend all those points by 2 inches, and I'm using my chalk to do this, and I would connect all the lines with my chalk. Then after extending that part by 2 inches, I'm going to reduce my center front waist by 1 inch. So the center front, I'll be slanting it to the side front by 1 inch to deepen the center front waistline, and I am going to cut that out, as well as the back plan. So you can see that the back plan is 2 inches wider from that crotch all the way to the bottom. As you can see, just on that side, not on both sides, they are even on the other side. So it's just that side and that crouch that has the 2-inch extension. I can see the slope of the center front, or the waist plan. Now for the back, because I raised that waistline by 1/2 inch, I would reduce that center back by 1/2 inch along that crouch line. Now what this does is, it kind of removes the tendency of that center back having bulges or being bulgy. So if I do not reduce that center back by 1/2 inch, you tend to have like puffiness around the upper waist of that back. So hence why I'm reducing the back by 1/2 inch. And these are all the plans laid together. This is the front. This is what the front looks like. It's placed on right sides facing. So I'll be sewing from that waistline down the crotch and down that curve to that end for the front. But for the back, I'll be sewing 4 inches from the end of that crotch, not from the beginning. That is because I'll be installing a zipper towards the waist of the crotch. So you can see that I'm just going to sew 4 inches from the end, which is from here down this point, with 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to join this front from end to end on the crotch. But for the back, I basically joined 4 inches from the end of the crotch. And if I open it up, this is what the back plan is looking like. It's open because we'll be installing a zipper behind. And for the front, I stitched from top to bottom, and when I open it up, it's all closed up. Okay, so the next step will be installing the pockets for the front, and that is what we'll be doing next. Okay, to make the pocket bags, I cut out 2 pieces of fabric that measure 12-inch wide and 10-inch 10-inch deep. So these fabrics are 12 inches wide and 10 inches deep. I have two of these. So what I'll be doing, I will take my one piece of this trouser and place it on those notch parts of the front piece so you can see what I'm doing. The trouser and the pocket bag are placed right sides facing, so I'm going to sew from that notch point on the waistline to that notch point on the side. So don't know that I'm not placing the fabric straight. The fabric for the pocket bag is placed in slants. It is placed in a slanty pattern. So when I sew it out, this is what it's looking like. I'm just going to cut off the excess from the trouser because we didn't place the pocket straight, so we'll be cutting off the excess of the trouser on this side like this. Then I will turn it over. I will turn the pocket bag over. You can top stitch the joining on this side if you desire to, or if you wish to, but I do not fancy top stitching pockets, so I'm not going to top stitch that. Next up, I'll be closing the bottom of the bag, and to do this I'm going to turn the fabric wrong sides facing and stitch that bottom part close. And the reason I'm turning it wrong sides facing is because when we stitch and I turn it inwards, that bottom stitch would be inside the pocket, not on the right side of the pocket. It's going to be inside the pocket, so when you turn your pants inside out, you don't see that seam. So this is what it looks like after it has been stitched. I stitched just that bottom part close, then I'm going to turn it inside. I'm going to turn the pocket bag inside. Just see what I'm doing. So this is going to be our pocket bag. As you can see, you can iron this down to lay it flat if you're having troubles turning it in or laying it. Okay, so when I turn it inside out, this is what it looks like, and see that the sides are aligned, and I'm just going to take my time to place this down. Okay, so when placing it down, you want to ensure that the pocket fold replaces the 2-inch that was cut off from the pants initially. So you remember that our pants was 2 inches deep and 2 inches wide and 7 inches deep. So when you fold your pocket like this, you want to ensure that you fold it in a way that the pocket extension on the side replaces the 2 inches that was cut out from the fabric. Otherwise you're going to have it short. So when I'm sure and certain that okay, it's 2 inches, I'm going to stop stitch the pocket pieces and the trouser pieces at the top like this. You can see that the top is stitched, all the pocket pieces are held to the waist of the fabric, and the 2-inch extension is coming out. Then I stitch the sides of the pocket to the sides of the trouser, and this is what our pocket bag is looking like on this side and on the other side. So I hope I explained this clearly. If you still do not understand and want me to have a detailed video for pockets, do let me know in the comment section. But this is what our pocket bags are looking like currently. Next, I'll be joining the front to the back, and to do this I'm going to open up that crotch line for the back and the crotch line for the front, and I'm going to place them right sides facing. Now when placing the front and the back plan, I would ensure that those crotch points are aligned. You want to take note of that because it's very essential. This could make or ruin your pants totally. So you want to ensure that those crotch lines are aligned, the one for the front and the one for the back. Then I would normally sew from end to the crotch to the other end, but you could pin it down if you so desire. I'm just going to stitch from end to end. So when I stitch, I will ensure that those crotch points are aligned, and I'm sewing by half an inch. Haven't sewn it, this is what it looks like, and see that both crotches are aligned, and I stitch from half an inch on from end to end. So what I'll be doing next is to join the outer side of the pants. So do remember that the pants for the back, or the plan for the back, was 2 inches wider than the front. So you do not want to trim off the excess at this point just because you have the back wider or looking wider. What you do is you pull the front plan to meet up with the you pull the edge of the front plan to meet up with the edge of the back plan on either side of the pants. So you're going to pull the front like this to meet up with the edge of the back like this. Do not trim off the excess, otherwise your pants will be too small and won't fit. Then I would sew the side from top to bottom with 1/2 inch. So I would ensure to pull the edges together as I sew, just so everything is aligned. Then for the waistband, I cut out a fabric that is 4 inches wide and long enough to go through the entire waist. And I'm going to install it, iron it down with a gum stay and install it onto the waist of the trouser like I have done here. Next up, I'm going to fold that waist into two and take half of my waist measurement. So my waist is currently 30 inches, half of that would be 25, half of that would be 15, sorry, half of that would be 15. So I'm just going to measure 15 inches and then I'll mark where that 15-inch mark is, or where that 15-inch point is, with my chalk on both sides of the waistband. So what this does is that it guides me when I'm going to be installing the zipper at the waist. So I'm going to install my zipper from that marked point on either side of the waistband. So I kind of when fixing the waistband, you're not when fixing the zipper rather, you're not fixing it straight. You're fixing it in a slant form. So it's wider along the waist, and as it gets towards that joining for the crotch, it kind of reduces in the allowance. So that is how I'll be attaching the zipper to the pants, and I'll trim off the excess. I did hem the bottom and ironed it out, and this is what it's looking like. This is the final look, you guys. I love how comfy it is. It's extra comfortable. You can spread your legs, squat, and not be scared of the pant ripping open. So yeah, do let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Do give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you haven't, share, like, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Okay, so you guys, this is how this pants turned out. Let me know your thoughts, subscribe, join the family, and I'll see you in another video. Bye.